The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. When humans finally built ships that could travel faster than light, they thought their dreams had come true. They thought the universe would welcome them with open arms. They were wrong. 300 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Concord. This was a great alliance of 47 different alien species that controlled most of the Milky Way galaxy. At first, humans were excited. They thought they would make friends among the stars. They thought they would learn amazing things and share their own knowledge in return. But the alien races did not see humans as equals. They saw them as workers, as soldiers, as useful tools that could be thrown away when broken. Captain Jake Morrison stood alone on the bridge of his starship, the Endless Horizon. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had served the Concord for 20 years. He had fought in their wars. He had watched his friends die defending alien worlds. And now he held a message in his hands that made all of that sacrifice feel worthless. His first officer, Commander Lisa Harmon, walked onto the bridge. She was younger than Jake, with short brown hair and a sharp mind. She had been with him for 5 years, and she knew his moods well. Right now, she could see that something was very wrong. "What is it?" she asked. Jake handed her the message without a word. Lisa read it slowly. Her face grew pale. "The Velkari motion passed," she said quietly. "They actually did it." Jake nodded. "Humans are now officially a provisional species. We have no voting rights in the assembly, no say in anything that affects us, and our colonies in the Orion Spur are being taken away." "Taken away?" "Those are our homes. 40 million people live there. The Tethany Empire wants the territory. The assembly gave it to them. Just like that." Lisa set the message down. Her hands were shaking. "We built those colonies from nothing. We turned dead rocks into living worlds. And they just hand them over to the Tethani because they asked nicely?" "The Tethani didn't even ask nicely," Jake said bitterly. "They demanded. And the assembly agreed because human lives don't matter to them. They never have." Far away, on Earth, another difficult conversation was taking place. Admiral Nathan Cole stood before the Emergency Council of the United Human Federation. The council chamber was a grand room with high ceilings and flags from every human nation. But today, it felt like a tomb. Admiral Cole was an old soldier. He had white hair and a face full of scars from battles he had fought for the Concord. He had believed in the Alliance once. He had believed that if humans worked hard enough and proved themselves, they would earn respect. That belief had died a long time ago. "The situation is simple," he told the council. "The Concord has declared us a provisional species. This means we have no rights. Our colonies can be taken. Our people can be relocated. Our ships can be seized. We exist now only at their pleasure." Councilwoman Amanda Reyes raised her hand. She was a politician from South America, known for her calm voice even in crisis. "Admiral, we have been petitioning for equal status for over a century. Surely there must be something more we can do through diplomatic channels." A woman at the far end of the table laughed bitterly. This was Dr. Grace Kim, the Federation's top expert on alien cultures. She had spent her whole life studying the Concord species, trying to understand them, trying to find common ground. "Diplomatic channels," Grace repeated. "I've been walking through those channels for 40 years, Councilwoman. Every time we get close to equal status, they find a new excuse. First they said we were too aggressive. Then they said our genes were unstable. Then they said we breed too fast. There is always a new reason. Because the real reason never changes." "And what is the real reason?" Amanda asked. Grace looked at her with sad eyes. "They are afraid of us. They have been afraid of us since the day we joined the Concord. Humans learn too quickly. We adapt too fast. We solve problems that their scientists have struggled with for centuries. They know that if they give us equal rights, we will surpass them within a generation, so they keep us down. They will always keep us down." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Grace was right. They had all seen it. Human soldiers fighting and dying on the front lines, while alien officers took the credit. Human scientists making discoveries that were stolen and claimed by alien researchers. Human diplomats being ignored and insulted in the assembly halls. Admiral Cole let the silence stretch before he spoke again. There is one option left. Something we have been preparing for a very long time. We call it Project Exodus. The council members looked at each other in confusion. Most of them had never heard this name before. Cole continued. 50 years ago, a small group of humans realized that the Concord would never accept us. They began working on a secret plan, a way for humanity to leave this galaxy entirely and start fresh somewhere else. Leave the galaxy? Amanda said in disbelief. That's impossible. The distance between galaxies is enormous. It would take millions of years to cross. Not anymore, Cole said. Our scientists have developed a new kind of engine. We call it the Andromeda Drive. It can fold space in ways the Concorde has never imagined. We can reach the Andromeda Galaxy in weeks, not millennia, Grace Kim spoke up. We have been building ships in secret for decades. 12,000 carrier vessels, each one big enough to hold 200,000 people. We also have seed ships carrying everything we need to rebuild civilization. Genetic samples, cultural archives, terraforming equipment. Admiral Cole looked around the room at the shocked faces. The Concorde has made their choice. They have told us we are not welcome here. I say we take them at their word. I say we leave this galaxy behind and find a new home where humans can finally be free. The vote was not unanimous. Some council members argued for more patience, more negotiation. But in the end, the decision was made. Humanity would leave the Milky Way. They would find a new home among different stars, and they would never look back. The secret had been kept for 50 years. In the outer reaches of human space, far from the watchful eyes of the Concorde, something incredible had been built. Station Prometheus floated in the darkness between stars, hidden from every scanner and every patrol. It was humanity's greatest achievement, and no alien had ever seen it. Chief Engineer Sam Porter stood at the main observation window, watching the final tests of the Andromeda Drive. Sam was a quiet man who had given 30 years of his life to this project. He had missed birthdays and holidays. He had watched his hair turn gray and his hands grow wrinkled. But now, seeing the drive light up with power that bent the very fabric of space, he knew it had all been worth it. The communicator on his belt buzzed. He answered it, and heard the voice of Director Megan Holloway. Sam, give me good news, she said. Sam smiled for the first time in weeks. The last calibration is complete. The drive works perfectly. We can begin the evacuation whenever you give the order. On the other end of the call, Megan closed her eyes and let out a long breath. She was 73 years old now. She had been just 23 when she first learned about Project Exodus. Back then, it had seemed like a crazy dream. Now it was real. How many ships do we have? She asked. 12,000 carrier vessels. Each one can hold 200,000 people in cryo-sleep. We also have the seed ships ready to go. They carry genetic samples from every plant and animal on Earth. They have copies of every book, every song, every piece of art humanity has ever created. They have machines that can turn dead planets into living worlds. Megan nodded even though Sam could not see her. What about people? How many can we actually take? If we fill every ship to capacity, we can evacuate about 2 billion people. Maybe a little more if we squeeze. 2 billion. It sounded like a lot. But humanity's population across all their colonies was over 10 billion. They could not save everyone. They could not even save most. This was the terrible truth that Megan had lived with for decades. We take as many as we can, she said firmly. Priority goes to families with children, scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers. Anyone with skills we need to rebuild. But we also take ordinary people, farmers, artists, cooks. We are not just saving useful humans. We are saving humanity. Quote, Sam understood. I'll make sure the selection process is fair. Across human space, the secret evacuation had already begun. It happened quietly, without fanfare. Families were contacted through secure channels. They were told only that they had been chosen for something called the Pioneer Program. They were told to pack light and say goodbye to nothing. On a small mining colony at the edge of human territory, a teenage boy named Tyler Brooks helped his father load boxes onto a shuttle. Tyler was 16 years old. With messy brown hair and curious eyes, he did not understand what was happening. His parents had woken him up in the middle of the night and told him they were leaving. That was all. His mother, Nicole, walked up behind him and put a hand on his shoulder. She was a schoolteacher, a gentle woman who always tried to explain things clearly. But today, her eyes were red from crying. "Mom, where are we going?" Tyler asked. Nicole looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the familiar constellations, was a different galaxy. A place where her son could grow up free. "We are going somewhere new," she said. "Somewhere humans can finally be ourselves. This remember. About no. About tibel dontus. Will we ever come back?" Nicole hesitated. She wanted to lie, to tell him that maybe someday they would return for a visit. But she had promised herself she would always be honest with her children. "No," she said softly. "I don't think we will." Tyler did not cry. He just nodded and picked up another box. He was young, but he understood more than his mother realized. He had seen how the alien kids on the station treated human kids. He had heard the names they called them. He had felt the hatred that the Concord species barely bothered to hide. Maybe leaving was not such a bad thing after all. Back on Earth, the preparations moved faster every day. Ships left the planet carrying millions of people to the gathering point near Station Prometheus. The Concord noticed nothing unusual. Humans were always moving around, always busy with projects and missions. The alien bureaucrats simply assumed it was normal activity. Ambassador Derek Collins played his part perfectly. He was humanity's representative to the Concord Assembly, and every day he put on a smile and pretended everything was fine. He attended meetings, he made small talk with alien diplomats, he agreed to unfair treaties and nodded at insulting speeches. Inside, he was counting down the days until he could drop the mask forever. One evening, after a particularly difficult assembly session, Derek sat alone in his quarters and wrote a letter. It was addressed to Kethral, a Morvani ambassador who had always treated humans with respect. Kethral was one of the few aliens Derek considered a genuine friend. The letter was short. "My friend, by the time you read this, I will be gone. All of humanity will be gone. I wanted you to know that I never blamed you for what the Concord did to us. You were one of the good ones. I hope you remember us kindly. I hope you understand why we had to leave. And I hope, for your sake, that the Concord can survive without us. I have my doubts. Goodbye, Kethral. I will miss our conversations." Derek sealed the letter and set it aside. It would be delivered automatically after the evacuation was complete. In the hidden shipyards, workers labored around the clock. They checked every system, tested every engine, loaded every supply. The seed ships were filled with frozen embryos and carefully preserved seeds. The carrier ships were stocked with food and medicine and tools. Dr. Grace Kim personally oversaw the loading of the cultural archives. Millions of books, billions of songs, centuries of human history. All of it compressed into data crystals no bigger than a fingernail. She held one of the crystals up to the light and marveled at what it contained. "The complete works of Shakespeare," she whispered. "Every symphony Beethoven ever wrote. The blueprints of the Eiffel Tower. The first photographs from the moon landing. All in my hand." She placed the crystal carefully into its protective case. This was not just an evacuation. It was a rescue mission for everything humanity had ever been and ever hoped to become. The final countdown began. In 3 days, the greatest migration in human history would start. 2 billion people would leave behind the only galaxy they had ever known and journey into the unknown. Some were afraid, some were excited, Most were simply ready. Ready to go home to a place they had never seen. The day of departure came without ceremony. There were no parades, no speeches broadcast across the galaxy, no tearful farewells on public screens. Humanity simply gathered in the darkness between stars and prepared to leave everything behind. Captain Jake Morrison guided his ship, the Endless Horizon, into formation with thousands of other vessels. Through his view screen, he could see the great carrier ships stretching out in every direction. They were enormous things, each one several miles long, built to carry hundreds of thousands of sleeping passengers across the void between galaxies. Commander Lisa Harmon stood beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. "I never imagined I would see anything like this," she said quietly. "None of us did," Jake replied. "When I joined the Navy, I thought I would spend my life defending Concord space. I never dreamed I would be part of something like this." The carrier ships began powering up their Andromeda drives. The engines glowed with a strange blue light that seemed to ripple and fold, bending space itself. Jake had seen many technologies in his years of service, but nothing compared to this. This was something entirely new. Something the Concorde had never even imagined possible. On the bridge of the flagship New Dawn, Admiral Nathan Cole stood beside Director Megan Holloway. They watched the fleet assemble through the main view screen. 12,000 ships, carrying 2 billion souls, all waiting for the order to leave. Megan's hands were trembling. She had worked toward this moment for 50 years. Now that it was finally here, she felt overwhelmed by the weight of it. "Are you ready?" Cole asked her. Megan took a deep breath. "I have been ready for half a century. I just never believed it would actually happen." Cole nodded. He understood. There had been so many times when the project had nearly failed. Budget problems, security scares, technical setbacks, but somehow, through determination and sacrifice, they had made it to this moment. "All ships report ready," an officer announced. "Awaiting final authorization." Cole looked at Megan. "Would you like to do the honors?" Megan shook her head. "This is your moment, Admiral. You are the one who convinced the Council. You are the one who made the hard decisions. You give the order." Cole stepped forward and opened a channel to the entire fleet. His voice was calm and steady, even though his heart was racing. "This is Admiral Nathan Cole to all ships. Today we begin the greatest journey in human history. We leave behind a galaxy that refused to accept us as equals. We travel toward a future where our children and grandchildren will never have to bow to anyone. Stay strong, stay together, and never forget who we are." He paused for a moment, then spoke the words that would change everything. "Send the message, and activate all drives on my mark." The message went out simultaneously to every corner of the Milky Way. Every Concorde station received it. Every alien world, every ship, every colony, every outpost. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of 3 centuries of disappointment and pain. To the Galactic Concorde and all its member species. For 300 years, humanity sought nothing more than to be your equals. We fought your wars. We solved your problems. We asked only for respect in return. That respect was never given. Our patience was mistaken for weakness. Our kindness was taken for granted. Our contributions were forgotten the moment they were made. We will not beg any longer. By the time you receive this message, humanity will be gone. Not destroyed, simply departed. We have found a new home, beyond the reach of your politics, your prejudice, and your cruelty. Do not look for us. Do not follow us. You had your chance to stand beside us as friends. That chance has passed. Perhaps in time you will understand what you have lost. But by then, it will be too late to fix it. Farewell. The United Human Federation. Admiral Cole closed the channel. The message was sent. There was no taking it back now. "All ships," he announced. "Activate Andromeda drives. Now." Across the fleet, 12,000 ships responded as one. The Andromeda drives flared to full power. Space rippled and folded around each vessel like water bending around a stone. The stars themselves seemed to stretch and blur. On the endless horizon, Jake Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as reality twisted around him. Through the view screen, he saw something impossible, a tunnel of light, spiraling and shifting, leading across 2 million light-years of empty space. "Drive is stable," Lisa reported, her voice filled with awe. "We are on course for the Andromeda Galaxy. Estimated travel time is 18 days. 18 days. The distance between galaxies, crossed in less than 3 weeks." Jake shook his head in amazement. Human scientists had done this. Human engineers had built these engines. The Concorde had always underestimated what humans could achieve when they worked together. Now they would learn their mistake. In the Concorde Assembly Hall, High Counselor Veltrix of the Velkari was the first to receive the message. He read it once, then read it again, certain there must be some error. When he finally understood what had happened, his face turned pale. "Impossible," he whispered. "They cannot simply leave. They do not have the technology." But even as he spoke, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human ships were gone. Human colonies were empty. Human workers had vanished from their posts. 2 billion people had disappeared in a single moment. Ambassador Kethral of the Morvani sat alone in their quarters, reading the letter that Derek Collins had left behind. Tears rolled down their face as they understood what their friend was trying to say. "We drove them away," Kethral said to the empty room. "We had friends among the stars, and we drove them away." The assembly called an emergency session. The Tethani Emperor demanded explanations. The Velkari counselor blamed everyone but himself. The Sindari representatives argued about what this meant for their trade agreements, but none of it mattered. The humans were gone. The great ships had vanished into the void between galaxies, traveling to a destination no Concorde species could follow. In the spiral arms of the Milky Way, where human colonies had once thrived, there was only silence now. Empty buildings stood on abandoned worlds. Machines hummed without operators. Gardens grew wild without gardeners. Humanity had left their mark on 1,000 worlds. And then they had walked away from all of it. They had chosen freedom over familiarity, hope over history, and as the fleet sailed through folded space toward the light of a new galaxy, Admiral Cole stood at his window and watched the impossible colors of dimensional travel swirl around his ship. "We did it," Megan said beside him. "We actually did it," Cole nodded slowly. "The hard part is not leaving. The hard part is what comes next. Building a new home. Creating a new society. Making sure we do not repeat the mistakes of the past." Megan smiled. "If any species can do it, humans can." Cole hoped she was right. For 2 billion sleeping souls, and for all the generations yet to come, he hoped she was right. The collapse began slowly at first. In the weeks after humanity's departure, the Concorde tried to pretend that nothing had changed. The assembly held its meetings. The fleets patrolled their routes. The politicians made their speeches. Everything was normal, they told themselves. Everything was fine, but it was not fine, and soon, everyone would know it. The first crisis came from the military. For 300 years, human soldiers had formed the backbone of the Concorde's defense forces. They were brave, resourceful, and willing to fight in places where other species refused to go. Now those soldiers were gone, and the gaps they left behind were enormous. General Tethvak of the Velkari stood before a star map in the military command center. Red lights blinked across dozens of sectors, each one representing a threat that could no longer be contained. "The Krethvar raiders have attacked 12 worlds in the past month," an aide reported. "Without human fleet support, we cannot respond fast enough." "Then send our own ships," Tethvak snapped. The aide hesitated. "Sir, our ships were designed to work alongside human vessels. Our weapons need human targeting systems. Our engines need human maintenance protocols. Without them, our fleet operates at less than half capacity." Tethvak slammed his fist on the table. "This is absurd. We are an advanced civilization. We should not be dependent on a species we classified as provisional." But they were dependent. They had been dependent for centuries. They had just never admitted it to themselves. The second crisis came from the medical systems. Human doctors and researchers had made breakthroughs that saved billions of alien lives. They had cured diseases that had plagued the Concord for millennia. They had built hospitals and trained nurses and developed treatments that seemed like magic. Now those humans were gone. And the diseases were coming back. On the Tethany homeworld, Prince Kale walked through the halls of the Royal Hospital. His younger sister, Princess Lyra, lay in a bed surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. She was only 20 years old, but she was dying. The doctors stood around her bed with helpless expressions. The disease is called Venn syndrome, one of them explained. Human researchers were very close to finding a cure. They had developed a treatment protocol that showed great promise. Then use the protocol, Kale demanded. We cannot, Your Highness. The data is locked in human medical databases. The encryption is beyond anything our scientists can break. We have tried for weeks. Oaz, Kale looked down at his sister's pale face. She had done nothing wrong. She had never voted against human rights in the assembly. She had never called humans inferior or demanded their colonies be taken. She was just a young woman who loved music and gardens and her family, and she was going to die because her people had driven away the only ones who could save her. They did not even sabotage us, Kale whispered. They did not destroy anything or leave traps behind. They just stopped helping, and we cannot survive without their help. The third crisis came from technology. Humans had quietly embedded themselves into every critical system across the Concord, not through conspiracy or secret plans, but simply because they were good at their jobs. They fixed things that were broken. They improved things that were inefficient. They solved problems that other species had given up on. On space stations throughout the galaxy, power grids began to fail. Communication networks degraded. Transportation systems broke down. The machines still worked, but no one knew how to maintain them. No one knew how to repair them when they malfunctioned. A Sindari merchant named Veltas stood in his warehouse, surrounded by spoiled goods. The refrigeration system had failed, and no one could fix it. A human technician could have solved the problem in an hour, but there were no human technicians left. My entire business is ruined, he said to no one in particular. Everything I built over 40 years, destroyed in a single month. In the assembly hall, the recriminations began. The Tethani blamed the Velkari for pushing the motion that declared humans provisional. The Velkari blamed the Sindari for not sharing their technology more freely. The Sindari blamed everyone. Ambassador Kethril of the Morvani listened to the arguments with growing disgust. Finally, they could stand it no longer. You fools, Kethril said, their voice cutting through the noise. You absolute fools. Do you have any idea what you have done? The chamber fell silent. Kethril stood and walked to the center of the floor. For 300 years, I warned this assembly. I told you that humans were not our servants. They were not our tools. They were people, just like us, with hopes and dreams and the right to be treated with dignity. You ignored me. You called me a human sympathizer. You laughed at my concerns. And now, look at us. Our military is crippled. Our medical systems are collapsing. Our technology is failing. And why? Because we could not bring ourselves to treat another species as equals. High Counselor Veltrix tried to respond. Ambassador, you exaggerate the situation. We will adapt. We will find new solutions. Will we? Kethril asked. In 300 years, humans solved more problems than we had solved in 3,000. They learned faster than we could teach. They innovated in ways we could not imagine, and we drove them away, because we were afraid. Afraid of what? Veltrix demanded. Afraid that they would surpass us. Afraid that the provisional species would become greater than the elder races. And now our fear has become our destruction. The assembly had no answer, because deep down, everyone knew that Kethril was right. Years passed. The decline continued. Worlds that had once been prosperous fell into poverty. Diseases that had been cured returned with deadly force. The Kreethvar raiders grew bolder, attacking deeper into Concord space with each passing month. Some species tried to reverse engineer human technology. They failed. Human designs were elegant and efficient, but they required a way of thinking that alien minds could not quite grasp. It was like trying to read a book in a language you had never learned. Others tried to send messages to the humans, begging them to return. But no one knew how to reach them. The Andromeda Galaxy was 2 million light-years away, across an ocean of empty space that no Concord ship could cross. Prince Kale, now King Kale after his father's death, stood in the garden where his sister Lyra had loved to walk. She had died 3 years after the humans left, just one of millions who would perish from diseases that should have been cured. "We were so proud," he said quietly, "so certain of our superiority. And now we are paying the price for our arrogance." He looked up at the night sky, toward a galaxy he could not see with his naked eyes. "They tried to be our friends, and we spat on them. Now we are alone, and we have no one to blame but ourselves." The Concord was dying. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. And somewhere across the universe, humanity was building something new, something better, something the Concord would never see. 2 million light-years from the Milky Way, in a galaxy that had never known the touch of the Concord, humanity found its new home. They called the planet Haven. It was a beautiful world with deep blue oceans, green continents covered in forests, and skies that reminded the older colonists of Earth. The air was clean and sweet. The soil was rich and fertile. It was, in every way that mattered, a perfect place to start again. The terraforming ships had done their work well. By the time the first colonists woke from cryosleep, the planet was ready to welcome them. Cities rose from the virgin soil within years. Farms spread across the countryside. Children were born who would never know what it felt like to be called inferior. Dr. Grace Kim stood on the balcony of the Capitol building in the city of New Hope. She was old now, past 90, but her mind was still sharp and her eyes still bright. She had lived long enough to see the impossible become real. Below her, children played in the streets. They laughed and ran and shouted without fear. They did not know about the Concord. They did not know about 3 centuries of humiliation and pain. To them, Haven was simply home, and the Milky Way was just a distant smudge of light in the night sky. A young man walked up beside her. This was Tyler Brooks, no longer the confused teenager who had left a mining colony so many decades ago. He was in his 60s now, with gray hair and a calm, confident presence. He had become one of the leaders of the new human civilization, helping to guide them through the difficult early years. "Beautiful day," Tyler said. Grace smiled. "Every day here is beautiful. I still cannot believe how far we have come." "Do you ever regret leaving?" Tyler asked. Grace thought about the question carefully. "Sometimes I feel sad about what we left behind. The places I grew up, the friends I lost. But regret? No. We gave the Concord every chance. They made their choice. We made ours." Across Haven, humanity flourished in ways that would have been impossible under the Concord's restrictions. Freed from political constraints and constant discrimination, human scientists made breakthroughs that leapfrogged centuries of progress. They developed new medicines that could cure almost any disease. They built power systems that were clean and nearly unlimited. They created technologies that made life better for everyone. Artists created without censorship. Writers told stories without approval from alien committees. Musicians played songs that celebrated human spirit and human achievement. Culture blossomed like flowers after a long winter. Families grew without quotas. Parents did not have to worry that their children would face discrimination. Young people could dream of any future they wanted, knowing that their species would not hold them back. Admiral Jake Morrison, now an old man with a chest full of medals he never wore, commanded the exploration fleet from his flagship. They had mapped thousands of star systems in the Andromeda Galaxy. Billions of stars awaited them. Stars that had never known alien conquest. Stars that belonged to humanity alone. "Another habitable world confirmed," his first officer reported. "That makes 217 now." Jake nodded with satisfaction. 217 worlds. And we have barely scratched the surface of this galaxy. Our grandchildren will have more room to grow than they could ever need. He thought sometimes about the old days, about fighting wars for species that despised him. Those memories felt like they belonged to a different person. The man he was now knew only freedom and hope. Back in the Milky Way, 40 years had passed since humanity's departure. The Concorde had finally managed to send a message across the void between galaxies. It had taken their best scientists decades to reverse engineer enough human technology to make it possible. The message was long and carefully worded. It began with an apology, acknowledging every wrong that had been done to humanity. It admitted that the Concorde had been afraid, jealous, and cruel. It recognized that human contributions had been essential to their civilization, and that driving them away had been a terrible mistake. Then came the offers: full membership in the Concorde with equal voting rights, territorial sovereignty over any worlds humanity chose to claim, monuments and holidays to honor human achievement, a complete restructuring of alien society to ensure that discrimination would never happen again. Finally, there was a plea. The Concorde was dying. Without human help, their civilization would collapse within a few generations. They begged humanity to return, to forgive, to save them from the consequences of their own actions. The message traveled across 2 million light-years of space. It arrived on Haven 3 months after it was sent. Delivered to the office of Administrator Tyler Brooks. Tyler read it 3 times before calling a council meeting. The leaders of human civilization gathered to discuss what should be done. Some argued for compassion. They are suffering, one councilwoman said. Their children are dying from diseases we could cure. Is it right to let them face extinction for the sins of their ancestors? Others argued for caution. How do we know they have really changed? A general asked. They might treat us well for a generation, then return to their old ways once they no longer need us. We have been betrayed before. In the end, the vote was not close. The decision was nearly unanimous. Tyler Brooks composed the response himself. He kept it simple, because there was nothing complicated left to say. We have read your message and acknowledge your words. However, humanity has moved beyond the need for the Concorde's approval or partnership. We have built something new here, something better. Your apology is 40 years too late. Your offers are no longer relevant. We wish you well in facing the challenges ahead. We will not be returning to face them with you. And this will be our final communication. The message was sent. And then humanity went back to living their lives. Children continued to play in the streets of New Hope. Scientists continued to push the boundaries of knowledge. Explorers continued to map new worlds. Life went on, as it always does. Dr. Grace Kim died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 97. She was buried on a hillside overlooking the city she had helped to build, with a simple marker that read, "She believed in us when no one else did." On Haven, the children of the Exodus grew up knowing only freedom. They learned about the Milky Way in history classes, the way children on old Earth had once learned about ancient empires that rose and fell long ago. It was interesting, but it was not their story. Their story was being written in the light of new stars. And in the old galaxy, the Concorde slowly crumbled. The elder races, who had once ruled 1,000 worlds, watched their civilization fade into memory. They had monuments and archives and records of their greatness, but they had no future. They had driven away the only species that could have saved them. They had mistaken kindness for weakness and patience for submission. They had been given countless chances to do the right thing, and they had refused every single one. Now it was too late to fix it. It had always been too late.